Everyone, welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group for Worksite Solutions. And today we are going to take a microscope to one piece of the group long-term care process. And it's one that outside of what we do as far as fulfillment on the enrollment side and tech assist on the enrollment side, I think is one of the aspects of the group process we spend the most time on. That would be the pre-sale process. So if I can first characterize what the pre-sale process is, I'll then move into kind of giving you an idea of really how to make the best impression and best use of your time of the pre-sale process while you're there, and give you an idea of what we have to help support you there. I think when we can kind of show what the alternative is to our process, you'll start to understand that you can have yourself very well equipped for this conversation. And when you move into other steps, you're going to have a lot of things spoken for early on, that makes sense to take care of as early as possible. So, um, first, I just want to take a step and describe what the pre-sale process is. So generally, when you're in the pre-sale process, you're on one of your very first conversations or meetings with the client or with a broker who's going to be working with that group client. Okay, so could be your very first. You could have had an initial introduction and are then kind of starting this pre-sale process, but overall, it's very, very early on. You haven't requested a proposal yet at this point, and the group is still going to need a lot of education around the concept of group long-term care and how the products and the plan design work, and really how the enrollment process is going to go. So your job at this point is to kind of open up the curtain and give people a peek inside what they can expect and set up the next steps to follow, like getting the proposal, like you know, actually kicking off the enrollment and all the other paperwork and back and forth questions that are going to follow. Okay, so this really sets the stage for the rest of the sale. I think it's an incredibly important piece to the sales process. So if you can do really well here, you're going to have a much easier time with the rest of the process because you've set expectations, you've provided all the requisite information that you need. And what we do at Buddy INS, whether it is something that you want to do fully self-sufficiently or you want our assistance from a team member on, we are equipped to bring you quite a lot to help you in this piece of the process. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some of our tools that we have available to you in the portal. But, Mark, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to add just one thing, which is it's important at this stage, just like with any sale, to do discovery. There's a wide range of clients you're going to talk to, some with no background, maybe in long-term care, never offered it before, to some that have had long-term care programs in place. So as always, be consultative, ask questions early on. Obviously you're building rapport as well, but that will also determine how deep you go into some of the sales tools and into some of the weeds. If they've never experienced long-term care before, you do have to, go back to the 101, like why is it important to do this as a benefit in the first place? Don't get too complex with the product early on, if they don't have that background. So just how you position the product will change depending on your discovery as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that's good to kind of unpack a little bit more before going into some of the tools. And I think just going over what are some of the best questions to ask besides do you have experience with long-term care before? And that answer can be very wide-ranging. Like, have you offered it before as a group? You could uncover we offered Unum, but now we have, no new program for new hires. Maybe I'm hearing from Unum groups that don't even really have the Unum program in place anymore. A couple employees hold the policies that they got, but essentially it went dormant. So they're looking for something completely brand new because they really want to bring back the idea of long-term care and, make it a kind of core benefit that they offer. But also, you're kind of searching for your advocates here too. You can be. So you can hear from some decision makers that you meet with the group that, yeah, I actually had personal experience with long-term care within my family. That's an important piece that, doesn't have a whole heck of a lot to do with the pre-sale, but it can help you to find that advocate who may be able to, give 5 minutes on a webinar if the group enrolls, right? And talk about their own personal experience and why they thought it was important to offer this benefit. That goes a long way for employee education. Um, you can, if a group has experience offering long-term care or maybe got far down the road of offering long-term care, like Mark said, you don't necessarily need to do as much long-term care 101, maybe, but I think asking and leaving it kind of open-ended and seeing what response you get can take the conversation in a number of directions. So I think it's important to do that and then ask follow-up questions after about their experience with long-term care. I also think, Mark, it's important to ask what other benefits do you currently offer, right? I think that's one of the most important questions to ask because number one, it could open up opportunities to look at other products for the portfolio as well. But for example, you may uncover that they are employer funding other benefits, which is also a great fit for long-term care, right? So if they start talking and they say, um, we have employer funded benefits that we generally are doing for executives or partners or something of that nature. Long story short, you start to figure out a lot more about the company's benefits culture and your goal as a consultant in a group long-term care sale is to make things fit with how this group usually handles their benefits, right? So I think that's important to ask about other benefits that they currently offer. And carriers want to know that the group has experience offering benefits. And the carrier is also interested in fitting into their benefits culture and the way that they do things. So that's an important question to ask too. Um, Mark, what else do you like to start off with? I think in general, a couple
Mhm.
of those can be encompassed into, so what has you interested in long-term care? What is the reason that we are talking today? Unless you called me and I thought it was a good idea, right?
Yeah, you usually have some context, obviously, on why you're in the meeting, whether you've been brought in by somebody, whether they've inquired to you inbound, or whether you've cold called and you're prospecting. Obviously, that's going to impact how you go about that discovery. But most of our cases, we're being brought in by somebody who has some interest. And so, relatively quickly, we're asking them about their company and their culture, like Jason said, and they're always happy to share. They're experts, right? HR department in that realm. So it does kind of ease them up, get them comfortable with, the kind of that rapport building process. But it will turn into product fairly quickly. So I would say, and you're probably going to show some of this, Jason, with the sales tools, but just make sure to understand that what your concept of long-term care is may differ from their concept, right? We might be offering, life-based long-term care, and they've never seen that before, and now they're kind of on guard because they're expecting something different. So those are very common. That's probably the number one question or objection we hear in those pre-sale conversations is why am I getting my long-term care on a life insurance policy? I already have life insurance. Am I replacing my policy? They're on edge about that. And you just have to kind of take them through that education of how it compares and why it is the same solution in terms of what you're solving for the employees. You're not replacing, their existing life coverage. Just be aware of those considerations and concerns because even if they don't voice it to you, that is oftentimes what they're nervous about.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, obviously, HR teams have to keep up to speed with product to a degree, and they're obviously interested in offering great benefits. So part of the job description is to understand not only what they're currently offering to employees, but what they plan to offer to employees. But you also have to understand that most of them are not licensed insurance professionals who do this every single day. You know, HR's job description covers a lot more than just understanding the products that you're offering, right? So it's important to keep that language simple enough to understand the concept of the product, especially if it's new to them, but also to sort of inspire interest. And I think that can only be kind of figured out through experience. You can obviously feel free to borrow experience and language from us, from colleagues. But like, for example, when I'm talking about life with long-term care as a group long-term care option, I've learned to keep it very simple with describing how that product works. I try to get whoever I'm talking to think about the life insurance as not only your ticket into long-term care benefit. So if we need long-term care, we use that death benefit early for long-term care, but it's also a hedge against never using the long-term care benefit. So if we do not need any long-term care benefit throughout our life, we're still going to have something to leave behind to our families after we're gone. I think if you can keep that language simple and relatively personal enough to understand, they will dictate how much more detail they need to understand things. So try to keep it high level but informative and something that will pique the interest to keep that conversation going, right? Because a lot of it should be dictated by their questions. If you feel like you're one-sided talking a lot and they're not asking a lot of follow-up questions, you may have less interest than initially thought, in my mind. Anything else you wanna add to that, Mark, or tips for the conversation in general? I think a lot of it, like I said, is going to be dictated by questions that are being asked.
Hmm.
And it's also important in my mind to strike a balance a little bit. You got to get some of the education out there, but you also want to take and fully answer every question that they have, right?
Yeah. I would say err on the side of asking questions, being consultative, because that's
Yep.
at least my personal demon, if you will, my flaw, right? Is I have to know silence is good, give them room to speak. And I'm sure some of you in this room also have that, right? In the sales side, right? We want to share, what we know, but it's more important to get them engaged at that early stage than it is to show them how smart we are.
Yeah, I think we can be yin and yang in that respect. Sometimes I fall on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'll be, full consultative. I'll be asking a bunch of questions, and then, it'll be time to educate from there. Or I'm just so dialed into their questions that the questions take up almost all the time. But wait, I have to get this education in, right, to really understand how things will work. So I think if you can find somewhere in the middle of the demons of Mark and I, you'll find yourself in a really good spot, balanced, and you'll leave people feeling good about the conversation at hand. So when it comes to pre-sale, your process is your own. We have tools to help you throughout this process, and there's obviously a recommended order of how we think you should use these tools, but it's designed to kind of fit within your process. So some of these tools can be used live on screen share. Um, some of them you may want to kind of do some homework behind the scenes and kind of set up the right atmosphere. It's all down to kind of how you work best. But for some of you, this will be a bit of a review, but these are tools we're constantly making improvements to. First things first, you got to use Product Buddy first. In my mind, this is the first place I go when I have a group case, especially if it's in a state that I am relatively unfamiliar with as far as how XYZ product will work. Generally, I can understand by the size segment I put in. For example, if I have a small group, I know I'm generally looking at two carriers, three total products. State may have some variance, but if I have a larger group and maybe I'm in a little bit more difficult of a state to tell, you can see that some of the products actually drop off. We don't have the standards term to 100 product. When we look at Transamerica, we see that only their chronic care rider is available, which is similar in contract language and benefit triggers as their 7702B long-term care rider. But this is something to know. Something is different about this case, right? That I need to learn about. Actually, quite a benefit to have the chronic care rider, especially if you've got people who skew older. On this one pager that's generated when I click on Transamerica, you can actually see that ages 18 to 75 can access the chronic condition rider, whereas the long-term care rider is only available for ages 18 to 65. So interesting to know the pricing can also vary a little bit depending on which rider. So it helps you kind of catch some of these things in the meantime and gives you an idea of how each product will work based on the state, right? So you can cycle through these one pagers and really get your options. Definitely try to be accurate to the size segment because it will give you essentially what we get for guaranteed issue offers for that size segment on the one pager. But this is a huge deal and a really favorable tool. Even seeing extension and restoration are actually not available for the standards whole life product in Michigan, right? So especially if you're somebody who works in multiple states and you don't just have one state to get down pat, super important tool to take a look at. But if I hit this download button here in my browser, I can just save this. And now I've got a piece of presentation material. I've got a handout that I can leave for the group. And I've also kind of got cue cards for my presentation as I'm talking this group through what the predominant group long-term care plan design looks like. Here's an example with one of our carriers, Chubb, right? I can go through sample pricing and value. I can go through what the offer normally looks like. You can see it's for groups of over 100 employees based on an age 45 employee. But I also am reminded what are my important bases to cover. Product guarantees are super important. Walking through the main product features. So, what's the chassis on this? How does the acceleration work? How does the restoration work? How does waiver of premium work? What kind of elimination period are we dealing with? All that's included in here. Who's eligible for the plan based on age, based on hours per week spent actively at work? What do the long-term care benefits generally look like for a group of this size for a guaranteed issue offer? And what are some sample rates for a 35, 45, and 55-year-old employee? So we're making sure you cover all of the bases of the conversation, and this is a nice handout to be able to leave with the group as well.
Yeah, Jason, I use this probably the most often, these
Me
one
too.
pagers, because I'm using them both pre-sale as a expectation or a summary of what we expect the proposal to look like. This is before you even get the census or do an RFP. This is what to expect. It's fairly accurate, as to what the client's going to get, depending on the size segment. But I also use it after we do the RFP and just, adjust it depending on what the proposal actually has on it and give that to a client as the summary. So it's a consistent format that they see at the beginning of the process and then they see later on in the process and they kind of get used to that.
Right. Yep. Good
Um,
point.
Before you jump to the other sales tools, I don't know if you're off of this one yet. I do want to also share a couple of things in the marketing section that are relevant pre-sale.
Yeah,
You're going there.
that's step that's planned. Are you
Okay.
talking about these summaries here?
Actually, I want to show the presentation. If you can just do like a search bar presentation. We actually just launched a new employer-facing presentation, this generic presentation. We have two, though. Another one customizable that you can use. Um, that one has a little bit more of the nitty-gritty, the customizable one, like on employer funding and some of those slides. But this one's a good one, like if you want agenda topics for your first meeting, this is the one that I'd recommend. And you can download this into PowerPoint. Again, just a template. You can remove our logo. Don't worry, make it your own. But gives you an idea of some of the key talking points more at a higher level, even before you get to that one pager, right? If you're doing more basic education, like Jason was saying, ticket into long-term care with the life policy, this will help kind of remind you or guide you to what topics you may want to cover.
Yep. And speaking to some of these items that can really get to the heart of what HR is looking for, right? What is the problem that we are solving or, helping to solve by offering this benefit? And is the process going to be simple for myself and my employees, right? So we talk about unpaid family caregivers and just long-term care 101. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Guaranteed issue underwriting makes the process a heck of a lot easier than individually underwritten applications. And, what's in it for the employer to be able to offer this plan and potentially employer fund it, right? Um, the kind of adage as old as time with benefits like this helping you attract and retain talent, right? And I also like to kind of talk about life with long-term care as potentially, like a pseudo retirement benefit, right? Like long-term care is generally, though it can happen sooner, meant to be utilized after our working years. So it's a nice benefit to be able to offer that, yes, it's portable anytime you separate from the employer, but after your working years, you're going to have that long-term care benefit there when people are most likely to use it. And even if you don't use it, when you pass, you will have that death benefit to leave behind. So just helping you to kind of get to the heart of what HR is looking to find out about this. So talking a little bit about productivity, impact to current family caregivers in the workplace, legislative trends around long-term care, just touching on these very simply, talking about eligibility again for the plan. So it's kind of the one pager expanded out and a little bit more general um, into a number of slides because I know many like to have kind of a slide deck sort of experience instead of the one pager. So this is a great place to look. Good call
Yeah, and
on
you can
that.
see it's really simple, so you can use that as your agenda as
Right.
well without feeling like it's going to take you a long time to go through it. You don't have to kind of read it one at a time, just kind of cover the topics that you think are relevant and skip through the others.
And this one is going to be a bit deeper, but certainly um, very easily customizable. You can see these text fields you can actually go in and edit. You can make the numbers say equal to what you see on the one page or equal to what you get back from the proposal, things of that nature. So a lot of these tools are here um, providing sort of agnostic value. It's about how you fit it into your overall process. It's flexible enough to be able to fit into your process. So I love that. Um, just in the marketing section, if you search presentation and you have worksite filter applied, it will show up. Both of these presentations will show up there. Good detour. Um, Next, I want to talk about the quick quote tool. I think this can certainly be used live on a screen share with a group, especially in a couple of different ways. Um, if you know us, you know we love calculators. We've got calculators everywhere. Um, you can choose from a number of different plan designs here and get an idea for any age of employee, including, say, the age of a decision maker or HR exec that you're talking to. Give them an idea of how the plan will work for them based on a certain benefit amount. It will give premium. It'll give total paid premiums from current to claim age, of course. It'll give you the monthly long-term care benefit, and it'll give you the total insurance benefit, right? And it'll give you our handy dandy insurance multiplier to give you an idea of how valuable the plan is from a premium to benefit perspective. But the most recent update we've created is to be able to compare two plans. So we can look at the standard on the left side and we can compare that to Transamerica UL on the other side, right? And get an idea of how do these plans stack up. Maybe a little bit more expensive on the premium side, $3 more expensive on the premium side for this specific example for the standard, but you're able to access a little bit more per month for long-term care. Total insurance benefit ends up about the same, given that you're paying less premium. Based on premium to total benefit, there's a little bit more value here, but the standard can give you access to more of that benefit per month. So, comparing two plans is helpful, especially when you're going to be quoting two carriers, right? Or you have proposals back from two carriers, very helpful there. But you can also compare for those groups where if you've done your fact finding and they've got a Unum plan, we've also got Unum pricing in here that you can compare to, which is super, super helpful. You can use this drop down to compare to the individual market if that happens to come up, or you want to show the value of, say, unisex pricing, right? Showing an individual plan and to show how much of a, you know, value that group long-term care is for women in particular with unisex rates on the group side. That's helpful, but you can also compare it to the cost of care. You can compare to self-funding, really helping you to bring up scenarios live and in color for your conversation as they arise. So I think super helpful here. We'll have more calculator talk to go through in a bit as well.
Yeah, and I think this is where your discovery really helps you understand, what the client's gonna feel comfortable with. Sometimes I use this to help explain how the life-based long-term care works because they can see that it feels and looks like health-based traditional long-term care in terms of how the LTC benefits are delivered. And we can compare them side by side. It's also kind of engages them in a different way where they feel like this is a real thing, right? It's not
Yep.
hypothetical because they can see it in front of them. So I think there's a psychology to that that really helps draw them in a bit more and get more comfortable with it. Remember, they're going to have to present it to other people in their organization, right? So the more that they can get their hands on it, the better. Makes you look better as the broker because guess what? If you're competing against another broker, it's highly unlikely, right, unless they're working with us, that they have access to these types of quoting tools. You can give them immediate satisfaction. Normally, the process works. You have to get a census, you have to go back and forth. It might take a couple of weeks even to summarize it all and get it back to the client. The client's interested now, and you on the first call can actually give them essentially an estimate of what that quote will look like. That's scratching that itch, right? Answering what they really want to know. And Jason and I talk about this all the time. Don't belabor the point about price. If your client wants to know price, give it to them. Show them the price and show them the value at the same time. And I think that's what you're doing in these employer conversations too when you use the calculator. So I'm using that one pager and then usually also kind of our demo calculator links, which Jason might share with you, which are also
Yep.
pretty new as a follow-up and sometimes ahead of the meeting. I'll provide that to them so they can review it. And so in your meeting, they actually had a chance to play around with it, to do some quoting themselves, try to understand what they're looking at. That's a really great way to have that first conversation.
So I definitely recommend Product Buddy first. Quick quote is something where you may want to set up a scenario behind the scenes and show that off, or you may want to, if something comes up in conversation spur of the moment, you may want to pull that up and show them value. But the census quote is definitely another one of your like first steps. If you have a census, obviously, this is something where we're going to need some level of census data for at least that date of birth. Um, what you want to do is once you've kind of gotten your carriers from Product Buddy that are going to be available to you, and once you've got an idea of what the offer that might come back may look like. You want to put this through census quote. And what I've done is just taken some dates of birth from a sample census and plugged them into the census quote. And once you have your carriers, let's say I'm between standard, we're gonna rename them from Allstate in here. Let's say I'm between the standard, Chubb, Transamerica, and Trustmark. I'm working with a big group. I'm able to get a proposal from all of these, right? We can do a couple of things with this tool. We could compare all four carriers at the same benefit level and get an idea for this entire group. Here are my total employer funded costs at this benefit level. But I can also come over here and say, carve out a group of, say, let's just say 8 individuals and get an idea of if I just wanted to carve out those individuals, what would my total monthly cost be as the employer to fund that plan? And what's the premium per month for that per employee per month for those 8 individuals? So this is also a super, super important piece. If they want price, give it to them. If you're talking about employer funding and you don't get to cost, I think you're building up this worry in the client's head. They're asking me to, fund a plan for all of my employees or for all of my executives. And I'm thinking about the closest reference I have, which is health insurance. And, I pay 13, 14, $15,000 a month for that. This is going to be another huge expense. You're kind of robbing the client that you're talking to about having a sigh of relief. Oh man, next to what I was thinking, this actually looks pretty manageable to do a plan for my employees. But you can also say we wanted to do just the standard here, whole life, and we wanted to take a look at a few different benefit levels. We can also show a kind of good, better, even better, best premium, right? So there's a number of different ways we can slice this up, and we can actually look at the different monthly long-term care benefits they'd end up with. We can still get that same data for the carve-out group and get an idea of what the group is comfortable with. And if you're trying to back into a budget, this is a great way to be able to do that as well. I think this is a massively important piece, especially if you're working with smaller groups who are really going to need to do employer funding to hit the application minimums for the carriers that they're going to be working with. It's an essential piece. So this is an essential piece of pricing to be able to show very early on in the process. And this is something that can be copied directly out of here and put into an Excel spreadsheet so that you can present this to them. Anything you want to add here, Mark? We have a
No,
number of
I
different plan
think
designs in here as
I think
well.
this has been a real eye opener since we launched it last year. How valuable it is, how quick it is, and easy to use. We showed the side by sides on the quick quote. Well, this also does something similar where it shows that you're doing your homework, your due diligence, right? The client wants to see you're shopping the market with whatever you recommend. So I think it's important to show them behind the curtain, like Jason was saying, the process that you're following to make sure they're getting the best deal. And again, that's protecting you again against other brokers. That's making you a broker of choice. So all kinds of reasons why I would just use this. But if you're doing a case and it's, let's say, under 500 employees, really critical that you emphasize the importance of employer funding for success on participation. I know we've pounded the drum on that a lot, over the last couple of years. But the ability to hit minimum participation is probably the biggest driver for getting the employer funding.
Yes.
It what could only be like 5 or 6 lives, with Transamerica or Allstate. Maybe it's 10 lives with Trustmark or Chubb. But at the end of the day, if they're willing to fund the 5 to 10 lives, that makes such a big difference in the outcomes for your voluntary case that you really want to press them to achieve that goal. And
It's a weight
because you can
off.
show them how affordable it is, it becomes less of a barrier to getting them to do that.
100%. And that's why we also express it as like a per employee per month, right? Helps keep, a manageable expectation of premium. So I think ever since this released, I feel like it has changed the way I do business in many ways, and I couldn't do without it in my day to day. Really, really helps. And this is not generally something the carrier is ever going to give you. What they will give you in every proposal, to their credit, is the pricing sheet. What they will not do is go through your entire census and price out different benefit levels for everyone in an organized format. There's no real way to necessarily do that through the carrier. And I don't know of anywhere else where we're able to compare pricing of two group plans, right? So these are tools that if you're just kind of going through the carrier or going alone, you're not going to be provided this experience or level of information. I also think um, before you even get the proposal, you are giving this group exponentially more info than they're even going to get from the proposal itself. When you actually get a proposal back, you will realize that I don't even really want the group to look at many pages of this proposal. I want them to look at the offer summary, I want them to look at the terms of the enrollment, and that's about it. The rest I kind of need to summarize and make pretty for them. And that's kind of our whole mentality here. If we can give you as much or more information as you would get from a proposal before you even request it, of course, setting expectations right and knowing that we're not going to know what we actually have the ability to get until the carrier underwrites us and provides us a proposal, right? But if you can give them what to expect, um, there's a level you can reach with some of these tools that you're not going to be able to reach through a proposal.
Yeah,
Um,
it's funny, Jason. Recently, last couple of weeks, I've actually gotten a number of inquiries from the carrier sales team actually going into the portal to quote it
yeah,
themselves, right? Because they don't have that ability on their side. And they're welcome to do it. So, yeah, anyone listening to this recording or on the call today, again, this is here to make your job easier. That's our goal here. And let us know your feedback. What other things are missing? What other things would you like to add? That's what helps us decide where we want to go and enhancing the tools as we go forward.
yeah. And one of the other items that I want to show you guys, because another essential part of the pre-sale process is giving the group an idea of what the enrollment experience will look like. So another item we've put in the marketing section very recently, if you just search demo, it should pop up, is demo pages that are based off of each carrier and some of their strongest plan designs. We're still working on a couple of them. We'll have Trustmark added relatively soon here, but we've got a number of different plan designs for the standard, for GWL and term, inflation and no inflation. We've got Transamerica, their Trans Elite product, and their Universal Life product, and we've got Chubb's lifetime benefit term. So if you want to give the group an idea of what their enrollment experience may look like, let's say I am working with a California group who's going to be looking at the 5% inflation on the whole life. You can actually click through this link, and this is a demo enrollment page that is generally kept generic from a product mention perspective, but we've got generic kind of long-term care education language in here. You're able to show, by the way, we can do a live webinar. We put on educational webinars where employees can join, but we'll also record the session and have it on a page just like this. You introduce this page as kind of a one-stop shop for employee education, being able to link right to the enrollment platform, and anything else, right? Quick hitters on what is most special about this plan, but also a custom benefit calculator. And the calculators in each of these demo pages are specific to the product and plan design that we refer to in the portal. So you can actually go in and um, run it as if you are on their enrollment landing page and give them an idea of the pricing and how this works and say employees will be able to come in here and get this information for themselves. They'll be able to enter their age and dial this into a budget that they're comfortable with, right? So that's a huge decision-making tool, as well as some of the educational graphics we have here, Long-Term Care 101, of course, talking them through simple enrollment instructions, link in many cases to meet with a long-term care specialist consultant. So this would take you to a scheduling link where you can have 15 minutes with a long-term care specialist consultant. And we have FAQs available. Now, if you click into some of these, it'll just say demo. It's a demo page. But this is really to show them the concept. This is to show them, product and everything else aside, if you enroll in a plan like this, I'm going to have you covered as far as education, as far as decision-making tools and pricing, as far as webinars go, as far as quick and easy process to the enrollment platform. I think this is a huge selling point for groups because this takes care of a lot of things that HR would feel like they normally have to do for themselves by way of educating their employees on the plan and to know that they would be working with an enrollment partner who takes care of a lot of that for them is huge. And you can also go over the concept of whether you want this in your Ben admin platform or you would just rather distribute a link to your employees via email. This link can really be deployed anywhere you want it. Employees can visit it at any time and they can go into the enrollment platform at any time. Of course, it's all proof of concept right now, but when we have an enrollment go live, this is all completely tailored to your group and your employees, down to having your company's logo on the page alongside ours. If you're a broker, having your company's logo alongside as well with co-branding. So I think it's not just going through product, it's not just asking questions. It's also let's get a peek into what your enrollment experience will look like, right? So I think these are a great new addition for you to be able to take folks through and a lot of different products to look at.
Yeah, just one point I want to make here is, we're here actually to support you and to promote you. It's not about our brand or logo or anything like that. The reason we put ourselves in this is that we want the client to know who we are, right? Because you're going to be working closely with us. We're going to be on those calls if you're doing full service, especially with HR. So we're all one team here, so they can understand, why we're there. But at the end of the day, if you want something that's customized or branded differently, again, just let us know because that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to help present you as having a broader team and that you can deliver because it's not just one person, right? You have a team of people that are going to be helping you and helping the client.
We actually prefer, if it's your preference to make reference to us in this way, that we are your team, right? They're the team that handles my tech and helps me with, some of the enrollment, education, and anything tech enabled about the enrollment. That's fine. We like being positioned that way. And really, if you want to be the star of the show, we want you to be the star of the show, right? So we're kind of happy to mold into the form you want to put us in, when you're speaking to your group. This is your case. We want to help you make the best of it. And however you, kind of characterize our presence, we are happy to go with that. One other thing that I want to show you guys, because I don't think this has gotten much play on the study group, but if you come down to group process under sales guides here, and you click that button, this is a page that's designed to kind of walk you through each step of the group sales process. So bear with us. There's still some construction being done on this page, but I think specifically um, the pre-sale section is really going to be a great help to you to kind of summarize the conversation that we've had here today. So you'll get an idea of what the pre-sale process is, and you'll get an idea of all of our tools that we have that we reviewed, including how to start a quote request form so we can get those formal proposals running for you. But for example, if I go to Product Buddy, you'll kind of get a characterization of why to use the tool. And we've got these kind of handy dandy slide decks in here to give you like a little bit of a deeper tutorial as to how to use the tool. And we've got that for Quick Quote as well. I think I need to make updates to this because we are just putting out calculator updates. Yep, so darn quickly that we've got to make some updates to that, but you'll get some ideas in filling in the fields and how to actually walk through and explain the elements of the calculator. That's kind of like tried and true. And then the census quote tool, we've got some instructions on how to get everything in and how to actually design your plan step by step. So I wanted to just show you guys that this is there if you ever needed a tutorial or even showing you how to fill out the quote request form if you have a group that you'd like to get a proposal for. So just wanted to get that out there for you guys and show you what's there. We also speak to the proposal process, you know, kind of walking you through if you want to do this self-service, who do I get a hold of? What do I kind of ask for? What do I expect? We've got some of our sold group information, what paperwork needs to kind of push an enrollment forward to live. We've also got kind of our commission split amounts here and what services are offered at which commission split levels. And we've got a form that you can fill out when you have a sold group that will help us kick that enrollment off to live. And then we are still putting together some items with the enrollment process, but just kind of talking through some of the main services we offer, or if you're not using us for those services, how you can kind of offer those services yourself in a lightweight way. So just wanted to take you through a number of those items because they haven't gotten as much play on the study group. And that's it.
Are we allowed to say anything at all, or are we supposed to be muted?
Oh yeah, you're allowed to say anything.
Can I
Yeah.
say something? So I've been trying to work with a case with you guys forever. We've been going back and forth on a lot of different things. And what I can tell you, I've been doing this now in my 36th year of doing it. I've done a ton of individual. Last year was an unbelievable year with hybrids and did big business. And I used to do a fair amount of worksite business, and we used to do really, really, really well with it. Did a law firm of 150 people and probably walked away with like 40 applications at one point. And, back in the day, it was really, really easy to kind of do things. What I can tell you right now is that it's a completely different world out there today. You need to have good systems. And as much as I know and doing everything, and I know, I'm not bragging, I know a good amount about this business. It was the best to have, whether it was Mark, Jason, Gretchen, Sandy, the team with Buddy to work with was definitely the right choice. We just did our first group. While the numbers did not go nearly like I thought it would, the one thing I took away early on was that we always said is if we can get them to do some participation and try to have the employer push the product as much as possible. I know this company really, really well. I am in the same building. I know them real well. And back in the day when you were face to face with them, you got better interaction. You got better ways to work with people. I am just surprised at how many people did not jump on this opportunity, but I am surprised that the size of the cases we wrote with the group were very large compared to what I would have expected with this. And their service, their touch with their HR, they're very high tech. They're very streamlined. Like they were trying everything before we did it. I can't say enough about them. I'm looking forward to trying some other groups and associations that I have now that I kind of got my feet wet with this process as well. But this company did it because I told them they had to. And I told them that they would be behind the eight ball. And you guys saw that in our meetings. And I'm like,
Yep.
just got to do it. And this is really grown up insurance. You gotta, just because you're younger, you gotta get the word out there. And I'm just happy that they did something, but it did teach me that no matter how well I know people, and I probably have out of the 330, I probably have 20 of them already clients before we started this process. Um, it just taught me a lot to say, even though I think that this should have gone better, more people doing it, I also think that the employer did not do as good a job really pushing it. And that's something that I'm going to take away from this group and making sure that we get that more buy-in and making them do more of what we ask them to do.
Yeah, and
So,
Brian, the good news, and really appreciate your partnership with it and how much effort you put into it as well, is that we can re-enroll
right.
and they'll get more comfortable over time and we'll continue to probably get more support. So that's the silver lining. Sometimes our second enrollment's even higher, better than our first enrollments because
We
they've
just
had a
had one
chance to,
recently that was like that.
yeah. So like I said,
Right.
just that consistency. But now you have the access, you have the product in place. You know what I mean? Like you really have the foundation set for a really good.
And now they
And
all
we learned a lot about working, with you on your case too. We were able to learn a lot. We were able to try new things. That was the first group we did an initial benefits survey for back then. And that really helped us learn a lot about how to actually put it out, administer it, what sort of information should accompany it. So there was a lot that we learned in just taking on that case with you. And like Mark said, that out into the future, there's even more potential because each time you touch on people with this stuff, eventually it's the right time for somebody, right?
And we got access to some people. We've already gotten people reaching out for their clients, asking us questions. And now at least they know we all exist on a higher level instead of just, seeing me in the building walking around. But I think from that aspect, it'll bring more attention to this subject. And I think it's just something that, larger companies need to kind of put that out there for their employees to see
And
this.
that's a great point. Brian, you're working with like a financial planning CPA firm who wants to offer this potential benefit to clients. So there's, like you said, a growth opportunity there because once you are exposed to it, maybe you own it yourself, you're much more likely to feel comfortable bringing that up, having gone through that education. So I'd be curious to hear your feedback as to what inbound kind of inquiries you get from that. But you're right, there's lot to like about the group.
I had two partners that came back to me that both work with my own personal financial advisor. So I was very thrilled to see that they actually do pay attention. But I'm like, I wanted them to come to my office and not their financial advisors. But I did get two of them to come to me, indirectly.
That's funny.
So
That's great. Thank you for sharing your feedback there. And yeah, I think it was um, a great, worthwhile learning experience and experience in general that we'll all be able to grow from, including the group. So thanks for adding that to the tail end. Definitely helps. And we had a really long pre-sale process. That was one of those groups who could have gotten a product with any of the four carriers that we work with. So that was just an interesting case study. And if you guys didn't catch it when it was live, some of you are newer. Brian actually did a live case study of that kind of pre-sale proposal process on a study group last year. So this is kind of showing you the cycle. This is like it has just sort of come to fruition. So keep making good relationships, keep having conversations, and you will end up with um, a couple of groups that will be that you'll be able to kind of advance to the point of an enrollment. And you'll get to see the whole process and folks at Buddy INS who are behind the scenes who you may not have even met yet who do a great job. So thank you for that, Brian. And I would say that's about all I have. So I'll set you guys free. Um, and we'll talk to you this time next week. Be well, everybody.
thanks. Thank you.